Hello everybody, this is the Adafruit CircuitPython Weekly for August 6th, 2018. This is the 48th, 47th recorded Adafruit CircuitPython Weekly. So if you're interested in hearing more about CircuitPython, what's going on in the community, please check out the Adafruit YouTube channel at youtube.com/Adafruit. You'll find a playlist there with all our back catalog of these weekly meetings. They happen Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Everybody is invited to join us on Discord, both during the week and in the voice chat for the meeting itself. To join our Discord, you can go to the URL adafru.it/Discord. That's the short link that'll get you into our Discord server. A lot of us are there all week long, so you can chat with us there in the text chat, and then we'll hop in the voice chat on Monday mornings to go over the CircuitPython Weekly. This meeting is split into 4 parts. We start with a quick state of CircuitPython plus all its libraries. It's based on a script that I run that pulls a bunch of statistics. So I'll go over that shortly. And then after that, we do hug reports, which is everybody gets a chance to say thank you to other people in the community for the really cool work that they've been doing. It's done in a round robin format where I will start and then I'll talk or I'll read off any from other people in the who weren't able to make the meeting. If they let me know what their hug reports were, I'll read those off, and then we'll go down the list in the CircuitPython voice channel. After we do hug reports, we'll do status updates, which is kind of what you've been working on in the last week and what you plan on working on this week. It's a good way to keep track of what everybody's working on and give tips and tricks on issues that people might run into. And then the last section is just a simple discussion section for anything that we thought would be kind of a longer discussion that came up earlier. And we'll cover that at the end. As we go through the meeting, I'll be taking time codes, which is a way for you to search in the video after the fact and figure out what you want to listen to based on the notes. So after we're done here, feel free to go to the Adafruit YouTube, or in Discord I post the link as well to the recording, and then that recording link will have a link to the notes, so you can check that out. Let's get going. State of CircuitPython. This is pretty incredible. But in the last week, as of last night, we've had 65 pull requests merged, which is an epic number. And I just want to shout out Katney and Brennan for many of those pull requests, because they've been working on getting all of the CircuitPython libraries in PyPI. So that was a huge amount of work. But overall, there were 7 authors for those 65 pull requests and 5 reviewers. So thank you to everybody. And as always, reviewers particularly are welcome. We've had 15 new PRs in the last week, I believe, as well, which doesn't seem right. That number must be wrong. And we have 26 open pull requests. So if you're interested in seeing the full list of what those 26 are, check the notes. It's in there. Issues-wise, in the last week, we've had 7 closed issues and 8 by 4 people, and we had 8 opened by 7 people, for a total of 133 open issues, which is about where we were last week. So no big changes there. And download stats-wise, our current release, we only really have one, is the 3.0.0 release, and it's 2,807 downloads as of now, which I think is about 800 more than last week. So still growing at a good clip. A lot of those are Circuit Playground Express. If you want to see the full breakdown, again, check the notes. And I'll skip over the library stuff. In general, we're still in this phase of we finished 3.0. We're talking more seriously about having it 3.0.1 for a couple bugs that have come up, but they're not super urgent. That's why it hasn't been done yet. So expect to see a 3.01 this week, just to put a little polish on things like the imports being slow. NeoPixels are having some trouble on M4, and there's an issue with the UART class and the memory long-lived stuff. So we'll do a 3.01 for that. And then 4.0 is starting to ramp up. It's highlighting the NRF 52840. So looking to get a lot done on that in the next month or month and two to get that going. So that's where we're at with State of CircuitPython. Now we'll do Hug Reports, which is a chance for everybody to say thank you to others for the work that they've been doing. And we'll do it in a round robin. So I'll cover the people who weren't able to make it, and then we'll go to Brennan. So I'll go first here after I take another time code. First and foremost, again, Kattni and Brennan, thank you for the PyPI work. It's been amazing to see all that go through, and I know we've had a lot of people already using it, so it's super valuable. So thank you for that. I wanted to do a shout out to Owen on GitHub, who did their first pull request to the Learn repo for an audio out fix that was something that we broke with 3.0 that we didn't know about. So we got that fixed. So there's a Learn guide out there somewhere that is now up to date for 3.0, which is good. And thanks to Owen for that. I wanted to say thank you to Jerry for the TMP 007 PR. It's not quite done yet, but Jerry's been really responsive on that, and I appreciate it. It's a new driver, so that's really helpful. And then lastly, for myself, I wanted to say thanks to Notro, Jerry, and Dan for the stack size tweaks. It's related to I changed the room we allocated for the stack in the current master, and Notro, Jerry, and Dan found that it was a little too small, and so they did some analysis and tweaked it for me. So I appreciate that. So now on to people who weren't able to make it but wanted to give Hug Reports anyway, which is always welcome, of course. Jerry wasn't able to make it and just said thanks to Scott for reviewing the TMP 007 PR and a group hug to everybody. That's not 8. Get my time codes right. So D Farning, who used to be known as 3bits, said special thanks to Dan for rebasing off the latest upstream MicroPython. That is a thankless task that requires great patience. Luckily in this community it's not a thankless task, but it's definitely a grungy task for sure. So it's always good to highlight that. So totally agree. And then Akuza Tuana, who is Phil. I should just say Phil. Listening today only says hugs to Kattni for blasting out so many library fixes over the weekend. And those of you in the chat have seen that as well. That reminds me that if you don't have a mic available, feel free to just type it in as we go through the list, and I'll read it off for you instead. But that's it for folks who weren't able to make it. So let's go to Brennan.
Yeah, so again, Kattni for all the software bureaucracy stuff with PyPI, and also just for being patient while we communicated all the finicky little details of that process.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Carter.
Just another group hug for me this week.
Thank you. C. Grover.
Yeah, group hug for everybody this week. I'm really enjoying and benefiting from the Discord community, getting a lot of help that I need.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Cool. Dakota. Is your mic working?
Yeah, the mic's working, but the person in the chair is not. Just a general group hug to the community for all of the work that they're doing on all these great projects, just inspiring the heck out of me to get out of the chair and get busy, to get learning so I can contribute.
Awesome. Well, thanks for making the meeting again. It's great to have you. Okay, Dan.
I guess I have a lot. Thanks to Jerry again for finding bugs where we thought there were none. And then thanks to you, Scott, for doing all this code restructuring and refactoring and stuff, which is really technical debt that is being erased, which is really good. Thanks to Jeff Epler for finding the long-lived bug, and thanks to Kattni for doing this incredible job of plowing through dozens and dozens of libraries to get them on PyPy,
Yeah.
which is a very high leverage thing because it'll really open up people being able to use our boards on other platforms.
And the library work that people have already put in.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Dan. Deshipu.
Okay, so I wasn't paying attention for the last 2 weeks because of the conference, recovering from it. But a grab hack for everyone. And thanks for releasing 3.0 and now 3.1 soon, I suppose.
Thank you. And thanks again for doing the EuroPython meetup. It was great to see people in here working on it. And then, okay, Phil's I read, so it's Kattni.
So thanks to Brennan for all of the tandem PyPI work, reviews, and merges on so many pull requests. And thanks to Scott and Brennan for getting these spun up on PyPI. It's definitely a finicky, a lot of very small moving parts. Still questions that I have, but obviously those will get covered. But thank you guys both for being patient with me as well, as I learned all of the tiny bits that needed to be done. So thanks.
No problem. All right, Mike.
Well, it was Kattni and Brennan that blew up my email this weekend. I mean, I have a tablet off to the side, and the volume's not like set or weird or something, but it was just going bing, bing, bing. But no, the hard work behind the sound effects was awesome. So the two of you get great kudos for that. I know Dan's been also working hard, and of course you. But I mean, the community's been really pitching in as far as finding things, and again, Adafruit does not take PRs or anything like, oh my gosh, what are you doing criticizing my code? It's like, no, we definitely think of this as a community joint effort, and when somebody finds something, it's like, sure, we will look at it. We're human. We will most likely shake our heads up and down and say, yes, we didn't factor this in, or oops, this changing that variable doesn't actually change anything in the code or something like that. Yeah, which has happened several times.
Right.
So guys, I mean, thank you very much to those on chat today and those listening. It's a very important part of what we've been doing.
Yes. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Okay, Roy.
For me, it's mostly just a group hug, although I wanted to, for everybody for continuing to do a great job and also being patient while I disappeared for being busy for the past month or so. Another also group hug to everybody for the fact that it was very easy to merge master into my latest work and continue working with a few conflicts.
Yay. That's always good. And welcome back from vacation. I hope you are refreshed. Although it sounds like you were busy, not just for vacation.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. And so SDW is lurking. Scott's lurking. So Summersoft. Usually text only. So we're just waiting. Summersoft is typing. And I will read it off. Must have surprised them. Oh no, copy and paste fail. For those of you who are just listening, the recording of this is actually both video and audio. So if you want to follow along in the chat after the fact, you should look up the video on YouTube, or take a look at your screen, because I don't think you can listen to it any other way. Okay, Summersoft says, group hug, I vacationed more than anticipated this week. And that sounds like a wonderful problem to have. I would be okay with vacationing more than I expected. That seems like a reasonable thing to do. All right. Well, thank you, Summersoft. And let's move on. The next section is status updates, which is similar to the first section where we do a round robin. But this time we'll talk about what we've been working on, what we got finished, and ooh, that's a very nice view. What we've been working on and what we plan on working on in the coming week. It's really good if people can be like, oh, I know about this or that, and give tips and tricks, or also make sure that nobody's working on the same thing as somebody else. So very common software engineering thing. So I'll start. I got the memory allocation changes in, so you can in master you can now actually change the stack size using supervisor dot the set next stack limit, something like that. Take a look in the docs. And what that will do is that actually changes how much we set aside for the Python and C stack, and as a result, that actually changes the heap size now, which is pretty interesting. So this allows people to actually decide where they want their memory to go. So the heap is no longer a static char array as it is in 3x. So that's exciting, and that should enable us to do things like dynamic USB descriptors and dynamic like code or like main Python file to run, like change that name. So that's checked in. Along with that, I did a couple other kind of easy code cleanliness sort of things, I guess. One is I got like 15-second build speed up by changing the way that the QString preprocessing works. So when we generate a list of the QStrings, which are interned, we actually run the C preprocessor over all those files. And I just did a quick thing of like, if there's no QStrings in the file, we don't need to preprocess it. And so that sped it up, which was nice. And then I also reduced the pin object size a bit by removing the QString reference in favor of just looking through the microcontroller dictionary. The QString references are 2 bytes, so that helped a bit. And then I also bit packed the TCC to gain a byte. Or actually, I think it was more like 3 bytes because struct alignment stuff. What I'm working on now, the other big thing is we're doing internationalization, which I don't think I've mentioned much to everybody here, but if you speak another language and you're interested in helping translate both the core messages around like click this to auto reload and press any button to enter the REPL, those sorts of things, plus actually all of the error messages as well, let me know and I can get you a PO file and we can start to get those going. Hoping to have that PR out today. I just got one final like niggly Travis thing to get going before it's going. After that, circle and text drawing is what I'm Lady Ada wanted me doing more graphics-y stuff, so I'm planning on doing that. But I'm also going to be looking at the 2 outstanding issues, the NeoPixels on M4 and the UART lifetime stuff that Jeff Epler's been doing really good investigation on. I'm going to do those 2 as well and get a 301 out so that we can get those few bugs fixed. And then lastly, string compression that I was working on to get more code size. I'm putting it on hold. Doesn't mean I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it immediately. I'm going to basically like put it up my sleeve so that when we need a few thousand bytes, we can bust that up. Okay, that's long-winded, but that's what I'm up to. I'm going to now read off for the folks that weren't able to make it. So Jerry N says, finally got TMP 007 driver submitted PR in review. Won't be able to test much for the next few weeks. We'll concentrate on reading/learning. 1953. D Farning says, also known as 3bits, as Rosie status. Been trying to get Rosie set up. Said spent most of last week experimenting with development hardware in a development environment. My current approach is to rewrite the logic of Rosie CI using the structure and best practices of Miguel Grinberg's book at flaskbook.com and learning Git. And then I'm going to skip Phil's update until we circle back to him. So yeah, those are the folks that weren't able to make it. And now we'll go to Brennan.
Okay. Mostly have been reviewing and merging pull requests from Kattni on the PyPI stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And also I have a long to-do list of libraries sort of in Lemore's preferred order based on what people have been requesting and stuff.
Right.
So I'm going to be running those on the Pi, hooking up the hardware and testing it, assuming that I have the hardware, and doing stuff like fritzing diagrams, guide updates, and README updates to some extent.
Awesome. That's super helpful. I know the Pi community will be really excited about that, and it'd be worth letting the Pi Moroni people know about it too, because they do so much Pi driver stuff. If we could get them on board, that'd be cool. Their Pi.
Once we get a little more momentum, maybe we'll be drawing some attention to it, I think.
Totally. Yeah, their PyCade looks really cool too. If you haven't seen it. Okay, Carter.
Nothing new. The one thing that I would start working on, I kind of lost track of where Brent was with his MCP work on that ADC.
Mm-hmm.
Has that been finished up?
I got back to Brent on a PR and I haven't looked. I don't think he's gotten back to me.
Okay, so that's still kind of in work then.
It is, yes.
Okay, cool. So yeah,
remember.
As soon as that gets kind of like finalized, then I'll roll those kind of whatever changes back into the ADS. So I'm still on hold for that.
Okay.
That's where I'm at.
Cool. Thanks, Carter. C. Grover.
Been working on audio details for my musical synth. Right now working on some CircuitPython I2S and DAC output ideas, and ran into some interesting issues with audio IO and audio out, and doing some testing on that right now. Having fun though.
Yay.
I designed a couple of new Eurorack PCBs. Still learning the Eurorack environment for musical synths and processors and things like that. Getting a lot of help still from Old Crow and from John Park, because they both have a lot more experience than I have. I'm just still learning. And I'm waiting for vendors to deliver things. That's the, tapping my fingers. And I have plenty of yard work to keep me busy. So in the future, it's going to be to continue ironing out some of that CircuitPython audio output stuff. And I think there's a lot of potential there for smoothing out the signals and getting rid of that initial pop and things like that. So it's, it really looks like we can produce something that may produce some more professional kind of outputs audio-wise. Cool.
Yeah, totally. And like I've been brainstorming about like doing a mod tracker and that sort of stuff, similar to like the Pico 8 has and things like that.
Yeah, I think there's a huge community out there in the teensy side of things.
Yeah.
Using their libraries that are in the Arduino or in the C++ environment.
Yeah.
Could easily come across to CircuitPython. It makes it so much easier to do things like sequencers and arpeggiators and that kind of stuff in CircuitPython. It's just so simple. Now we just need to get the signal processing down.
Yeah, Paul's library, the Teensy library, is really, really cool, but Lemore wanted to just port it over, and I looked at it, and it's like so much of its work is done at compile time that I don't know if we'd be able to adapt it. But
well, I think the first thing is to deal with, at least in the synthesizer environment, to deal with control voltages, because CircuitPython is just perfect for that. So sequencers, arpeggiators, that kind of stuff. The second thing to look at is audio signal processing, and I think you guys have the right approach. You start with being able to play a sample, be able to play a wave file, and call that good. and then later on we can talk more about signal processing.
Yeah, totally. Good. Well, I'm glad to get your brain on this. It's going to be really fun.
It is fun.
I have my I don't know if you saw Show and Tell last week, but I got my PSS 140 Yamaha keyboard that I want to hack and put CircuitPython in as well.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I was lusting over that just a little bit, and then I remembered I have other projects.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do have a Feather M0 to MIDI interface.
Nice.
That I've been using, and also Trinket M0 to Feather or to a MIDI interface. So if you need any help with that part of it, I've got a lot of stuff that's been working here, and I've got boards out on Osh Park that can do that stuff.
Cool. Yeah, I was thinking like a MIDI Featherwing would be neat too.
Got one.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's out there on Osh Park somewhere.
Okay, well, we'll talk more for sure. I don't have the cycles right now to do it, but we'll definitely circle back to it. Thanks, Seagrover. Okay, Dakota says no status, not working on anything, just playing. And so we'll go to Dan.
Hi. So a bunch of miscellaneous things. There was been doing a lot of work on Windows drivers that are in the Arduino board support packages, because those drivers were inadvertently making C-Play boot not work on the Circuit Playground Express. And we have to push up a change for that. So testing that. There's this utility from Nordic for the NRF52 chips called NRF Util, and the more updated it to Python 3, and we made a release to go on PyPy, and I'm working on some stuff to build Windows and Mac executables that are self-contained, so that people don't have to install Python and deal with pip and things like that just to use NRF Util. Which is particularly for the not so much for the 52840, because it's going to have UF2 bootloader, but for the 52832 and Arduino, it's useful. And I'm going to start working on various more NRF52 implementing. There's a long list of things to be implemented for the NRF52 boards for 4.0. So that's coming up.
It's rapidly approaching, I think.
That's right. Yeah, and I'll be away next Monday. I'll be on vacation, but I'll be back the following Monday.
Okay, so you're gone for the week there.
I'm gone for the Saturday to Saturday, so yeah.
Right. I thought I put that on my calendar. All right, thanks, Dan. Okay, Radomir Deshipu.
Okay, I'm still working on that standalone version of the Pew Pew console thing for teaching games. It currently looks something like this, and I'm trying to make it as cheap as possible, for sure below $10 a piece. So I got rid of the chip that drives the LED matrix, and I'm now writing a C library for CircuitPython that will drive the matrix in software.
Cool.
One problem I have to redesign the PCB, because I got it to work with on and off for pixels, but it's too slow to do PWM. I'm using the system tick timer for it, so it's only 1 millisecond. So it's too slow for that. And the plan is to use PWM, like the hardware PWM on the pins. Instead. So, but I use pins that don't support PWM, so I need to redesign.
Yeah.
And the second thing, I'm wondering, because I'm also playing a bit with cherry plexing right now. And with cherry plexing, the problem is you need to switch between on and high Z, or off and high Z, instead of between on and off. And I didn't look into the data sheet yet, but perhaps something like that is supported in PWM. It would be very nice to have something like that.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, it's sounds like a strange thing to have. But,
yeah.
Yeah. So that's one thing. And another thing is that there is going to be a super conference this year soon in Los Angeles, organized by Hackaday.io. And they asked me about a PCB with CircuitPython that I made some time ago. And perhaps if that works, they will include that into the swag bags.
Cool.
So it looks like this.
Oh, nice.
Actually, not this scope. If you click on the link, it shows a different image, the Jolly Rancher one.
Okay.
So I based the idea on the Drema a little bit with the contact pads on it. So that's it.
That's super cool. Ah, yeah, I see. Open the link. Ah, great job. Always cool to see what you're working on, Teshifu. Okay, Akusa Tuana said listening only today, no update. Okay, Jeff, do you have status update? Nope. All right, thanks, Jeff. Katney.
So it's been all PyPI. There's so much to it. I made a massive spreadsheet, which is literally the fanciest spreadsheet I've ever made. It's got checkboxes and they change color. Woo. So been working through all the steps on that. I'm about, if you just based on the PRs that are in, I'm about halfway done. Based on the actual PyPI stuff being set up and deployed, I'm about a third of the way done. I'm running into pilot errors as I go, and some of them are, I think I know how to fix them, but they would require testing. So I'm disabling. I'm commenting in the code that it needs to be refactored when it can be tested, and there's a checkbox on the spreadsheet for needs to be refactored. So when we're done with all this, we need to circle back and take a look at those, because it's not great.
Yeah.
This is just not a great way to do it.
That's fine for now, though.
Yeah, but it's just I'm making a note of it so that we know to come back to it. And there's a few that I did before that I did not make a note of, so I need to go back through, I think, like 15 or 20 libs and figure out which ones I did that on and make a note of those, just so we've got it all in one place.
Right.
And so we're also adding in to add read the docs to all the guides for all the sensors, so that we don't have to explain every little bit. People can just go to read the docs and figure it out. So the immediate future is still more PyPI deployment and checking and Travis and releases and pull requests, and getting all that set up, because we're just trying to plow through all of the libraries.
Right.
And I have a couple questions about a couple libs that I think are basically the same question. If we could talk about that at the end, that would be good.
Okay.
And other than that, that's pretty much what's going on with me.
Yeah, it's like you've been working heads down on stuff.
Yeah. And frankly, the spreadsheet's handy because it keeps track of where I am, but it also shows a big green block of things I've done, so it's also very rewarding.
Yeah, very satisfying.
Because I can look at it and go, oh, look at this, it's almost halfway green.
Yep.
Hooray! Because that's the kind of thing that we need to see to actually think that we're getting anything done.
Totally. Well, keep up the great work.
Thanks. Will do.
All right, Mike.
All right. I put a couple of things on Discord. We have our Python on Microcontrollers newsletter. The growth has been about double what the other newsletters are currently pulling. It's been fairly popular, but it's still trailing a little bit because it was the last one introduced. So I just want to put a plug in for if anybody didn't know that Adafruit was doing a spam-free, ad-free, never sell your name or otherwise use your email address for anything other than sending you an awesome newsletter once a week on Python and microcontrollers and related information. Go to adafruitdaily.com. It's a separate domain just for this. And you can sign up for the Python newsletter, and there's some other newsletters. Again, it's all the same, no spam, no anything. And we will send you information for free and let you know what's going on. Okay, besides that, we finally got approval, and now CircuitPython is on the awesome list after a long time trying to get it there and saying we're going to be there. We're on there. The maintainer of the awesome lists has, I don't know, they have like a bazillion different open source things that they work on, and I wasn't really aware, but finding, like all of us, finding enough CPU cycles in daily life to focus on any one thing can be difficult. But actually we pitched in and helped on a couple of they want people to help them with their pull requests so they can then have enough time to work on your pull request, which is fair enough. So Lady Ada and I did that for a couple of related projects. So
cool.
We're always glad to pitch in. So we're on there now, most of my work that you might see on Adafruit is mostly tutorial related. Most of the stuff now tutorial wise, we're trying to write both in Microsoft MakeCode and CircuitPython, doing similar if not the same thing. Right. So if anybody is kind of at the beginner level, or the MakeCode is their speed, then they've got that. If somebody wants to go the Python route, which has a lot more flexibility as far as adapting it to their own uses, or I'm talking to the right crowd. That there's the Python source code also, and so a lot of the tutorials were making kind of like the teach you one thing well kind of thing. So right. We did make it a keyboard and make it a mouse. So they show you the code to say, okay, I want to emulate a keyboard, I want to emulate the mouse. And so if, say, somebody were to do an assistive technology project, or a project where they needed to get input into a computer, which, it's always, for me, it's like, it should be easy to get things into a big computer from a little computer. And it turns out, no, there's no GPIO on a big computer. So you just find ways to do it. And something like USB and HID is a lot easier to do now with things like CircuitPython than it ever was with Arduino. I think that's where we're leveraging some of the power in today's projects. So, so keep an eye out on the Adafruit Learning System for tutorials that may have code that might help you with specific things. You'll find those are also being sprinkled in, as well as the other types of projects where it says, okay, I want to build, we've got some IR stuff. Thanks to, I did some work, and Kattni did some work, and somebody else. We did a lot of IR stuff. So there wasn't much IR code out there as far as, how do you actually use it. Right. And now we have a number of things that show you both kind of the basics and Kattni's essentials, and then how to make fun things like zombies versus humans kind of game, you know. So
Yep.
we're hoping to cover everything. So
awesome.
That's what's going on.
Yeah, and if anybody wants to help out with the newsletter, it's done on GitHub. So yeah, if you're interested, reach out to us, and we'd love to have more contributors to the newsletter as well. Definitely.
We've got our finger on the pulse of various things, but there's a lot of news we can miss, and also just fun things. I mean, somebody builds a really cool project using CircuitPython. We want to see it. It's like, hey, we'll do that. A lot of people are good at tweeting or other GitHubbing that, hey, I built something cool, but some other people might not be, and it's like, hey, just drop us a line, we'll look at it and say, hey, yeah, that's newsworthy, so we'll put it in.
Yeah, totally. All right, thanks, Mike.
Okay. Thanks, Scott.
Roy.
So I've resumed work on the pixel buff and RGB LED classes, and currently working on implementing the pure Python pixel buff implementation. And of course, as I do that, I'm realizing a few questions like, what should I call the byte orders for dot stars that happen to have red RGB and then brightness? That's kind of what, it's not really alpha because it's not transparency, but it's, and I also don't want horrible constant names and such. So if anyone has some good feedback on that, we can talk about it afterwards. I'm hoping to have the pure Python pixel buff in place soon, so I can finish doing sort of the refactor or creation of .star2 and NeoPixel 2 that use the RGB LED base class instead.
Right. Yeah, that'll be awesome. And sorry I didn't get back to you yet. Just was starting the meeting up.
Oh, no problem.
Okay, Summersoft, last but not least. STWD is lurking. Scott's lurking. Okay, I'm going to take a time code. Summersoft says, again, not much progress this week. I don't believe that. Adabot patches. Code of conduct patch was successful on all library repos. The Travis YAML patch for Pilot failed across the board. Realized the problem was the diff result during patch file creation. Basically included a line that was unique in each library, which raised the not applicable flag. I figured out how to make a patch file without the unique lines and how to run the get am so the error isn't flagged. Currently working on adding command line arguments to the Adabot script so that any necessary flags can be sent through to the am command. Should have a PR in this week. That's super cool. Super valuable infrastructure there, Summersoft. And then also, Summersoft says for frequency in, only took like 2 momentary stabs at correcting the interaction. Nothing to report beyond that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Summersoft. And thank you everybody for your status updates. It's always exciting to hear all the different things that are going on in CircuitPython land. So let's circle back to our discussion / in the weeds section. If I remember right, we had 2 things come up. Kattni had some questions about libraries, and then Roy had some questions about naming. So we'll start off with Kattni.
Also, Summersoft, real quick, I started, as I'm going through and doing all this PyPI stuff, I've been adding the the Pilot force reinstall line. So it's not in all the libraries because I didn't start that initially, but it's getting put into a lot of them. I feel like having the infrastructure you're working on is still crucial for future things. I'm just letting you know that that with this particular thing, I've been going through and doing it because we've been running into Pilot problems. So yeah. In an attempt to fix those, I've been adding that line.
Cool. Yeah, that infrastructure is really handy.
So the 2 questions that I have are about IR remote and GPS.
Okay.
And GPS, imports time. It doesn't use anything else.
Mm-hmm.
It apparently uses UART. Does that mean that it needs Adafruit Blinka or no?
It would need Adafruit Blinka for UART.
Okay, because it doesn't actually import UART
Really?
anywhere.
It gets passed in.
It gets passed in, yeah.
Oh. Then you wouldn't need it as a dependency.
Okay.
Since
And
it's
then
not imported.
That's okay, so that's GPS. Okay. Okay. And then IR remote imports array.
Which is a built-in to Python.
So it does need Blinka?
It doesn't.
Or does not?
Array should not be in Blinka.
Okay, so neither of those two. So that was my question. Those two did not act the same as the rest.
Yeah.
So since I wasn't really sure what was going on with those, so those are the two that I skipped.
Cool.
So that's my.
But I have a question. But if could I say something? If GPS uses a UART object, then it expects something that's going to act like a UART object. So.
But the UART acts like a stream.
Oh, just an ordinary stream? Okay.
Yeah, I think UART's like there's that MicroPython helper that UART leverages to be able to do like read line, that sort of stuff. That's all Python stream stuff.
So they don't have to use our limitation UART. Okay.
We don't need to like they likely do want to install Blinka themselves and do it, but we don't need to force them to do that. They could use some other socket.
Is there something like suggested as opposed to requirements?
No, not that I think.
No.
And I don't know.
Suggested.txt.
Yeah. I mean, I think in the examples, you just have to document that, like your example requires it as well.
Okay. All right.
But yeah, that's a good point.
So for neither of those two have any. So then in the setup.py, the install requires or whatever is just going to be brackets, right? Nothing in it. That's all I do. Okay.
Yeah, if it's just like time and array, which are built in, then it shouldn't need anything.
Okay.
But it would be good to document somewhere that like you likely want to use it with this.
Okay. No idea where that would go.
That would probably be in the README. Or as a comment in the example, if we have an example.
Okay.
Or in the guide.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, that's like, so the problem is that's far out and I don't know where to like put, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't know where to write down that needs to happen.
You can always, I mean, when in doubt, you can always create an issue on CircuitPython.
Oh, all right. That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, and that goes for everybody. Like, if you ever don't know where it goes, like, we can always put it there and we can move it elsewhere later or whatever. It's better to have it in the wrong spot than not have it anywhere.
All right. Thank you.
All right, let's go on to Roy and pixel buff naming. Do you want to give us background on that, Roy?
Sure. So, just for a bit more background, so the pixel buff is a C implementation of RGB LED matrix or strips to accelerate the pixel or the byte order manipulation and brightness manipulations and support both single and double buffer operation. Double buffer operation lets you scale brightness with a single property set. For the platforms that have enough, memory on or flash, we'll be able to include the C-based pixel buff, and for the platforms that don't, there will be a pure Python version that will hopefully fit into Flash as well. And the one of the differences the combined library is trying to address is that different types of LED strips have different byte order sets. Some are just simply RGB or BGR or so forth. Some of them also have a white byte, so then you have RGBW. And then finally, you've got ones like dot stars that are actually, there's two different dot stars that I know of. One is RGB, or actually I think it's BGR, and then a brightness byte. The brightness byte is actually not a full byte. It's actually 0 to 32 are the valid ranges on it. Some bits that are needed for indicating I think it's the start of the pixel or the end. I can't remember specifically. And then there's also the white only versions of the dot star, although they behave like RGB, they are just pure white.
Right.
And so I've been one of the classes that exists in the Pixel Buff or RGB LED is the byte order information. So it tells the underlying libraries which particular byte order you're running with and whether it has white or if it has, I guess, luminance or brightness or intensity or alpha. Trying to come up with a good constant name. And I don't like using B for brightness because then you end up with like RGBB or RBGB, and it's not going to be clear to people what that really means.
Right.
Then using A for alpha sort of throws me off a little bit this is for the dot stars. RGBW will be there for the strips that are RGBW, and the constant will set the has white bit to be true in the class.
Right.
But the has brightness is a different bit that I want to have.
Yeah, I think I've seen 2 votes for intensity now. Dakota and Dan, I think, both suggested intensity.
So RGBI or BGRI or so forth. I think that one and gives us a naming scheme that we can continue to extend. So if we end up with something that happens to be RGBW and I, because it's possible. Lowercase I, that could work.
I feel like if you do IRGB, then it's actually an Apple product.
That would be, yeah, we might get in trouble for that.
I'm looking to see if there's any kind of standard out there already.
A seems to be the standard in the graphics world, but like I said, it's not truly alpha here because it's, it's...
A is transparency rather than...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about going with the sort of the print world in K, but again, this isn't black.
So there's I was just Googling this, and some people say, or somebody says like that the brightness, the APA 102 brightness values actually, when you kind of move it down, you get flicker.
You do.
And I kind of remember that, yeah, that Lamore said, we don't use that because it's not very good, or something like that. So, I mean, you could put it in, but I'm not sure whether, if it's sort of not recommended, whether we should bother. So if it's not a recommended way of adjusting the brightness.
Yeah, I was going to leave it in because it's feature complete to do it, though recommending people avoid it and simply use brightness would help. One of the things the new libraries will do is they'll be computing the relative brightness at set of a pixel as opposed to when you flesh them all out like they used to. Or sorry, send them or show them. So we'll actually gain some performance improvements because of that.
Right.
It's possible some people actually want the flickering effect to do neat stuff, because I can imagine somebody who's doing some persistence of vision stuff where they intentionally want, imagine a spinning strip of dot stars, and they want they want some of them to flash faster at the bottom of the stick than the ones at the top. So now you actually have a use for setting the per pixel brightness to say 1 at one end of the stick and 32 at the other end of the stick. And now you've got completely different PWMs going on each of the different positions in the stick. I haven't addressed Gamma yet in this library. That I felt would be something we build on after we get feature parity with what currently exists, but improve performance and the structure of the code library so that everything's shared.
I'd like to ask about one thing. So since I'm working on this matrix driving code, I was wondering if there is any infrastructure already for a library, for a C library to grab one of the timers and use it for something else, PWM or anything else like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure I understand the question.
The problem I have, so right now I have a software, a library written in C that plugs into the system timer, the system thing,
Right.
that scans the LED matrix to display whatever it is there.
Right.
And the problem is that the system tick happens once every 1 millisecond, and that's enough to just show on-off pixel, but not enough to do any
Right.
kind of.
I think this is it.
effects.
I think this is separate from the pixel buff thing that.
Yeah, well, you asked if there is anything.
Yeah, sorry. I meant for people to do it in the text chat so
Oh,
that I could go
I'm
from
very
one
sorry.
thing to another.
Okay, so
we'll finish up Roy, and then I know there's
yeah,
a couple
I
people
can
who
hear
have
some-
stuff. Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, well,
Sorry.
I think we'll continue, or I'll run a vote in the channel afterwards. I think for the constant name.
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like value, luminance, intensity, glowiness are all.
Glowiness.
Yeah.
Maybe a tongue-in-cheek vote.
Yeah. I guess it has the same problem as green. Like it matches up with green too. S for sparkliness. Yeah, I think Roy, I think the takeaway is that we're all okay with you picking some other letter.
Yep. Okay.
And whatever you feel like you want to do is okay. Okay, let's go to Deshipu since he already started talking about what he's interested in. So my understanding is that needing a we don't need another abbreviation that's CP. So Deshipu, I think having another class that uses timers is totally fine.
Okay, so I just need to basically, but the question is there anything in the CircuitPython right now that manages the timer? Should I mark it somehow as used so that, for instance,
Yeah,
don't grab it?
Yeah, there's a shared data structure for keeping track of what channels are in use, but in general for tracking whether something's in use or not, we just use the enable bit. We actually use just the peripheral state.
Oh, I see. So if I enable a timer, it's basically mine.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, it's meant to be so that you don't need a separate data structure. You just if it's not available, if it's not enabled, then it should be free. But it's almost always true. But we might run into cases where that's not.
Okay, that makes things much simpler. So I just need to read the data sheet about how to configure a timer.
Yeah, and you could take a look at look in the peripherals library because there are some helpers there now too. Because we do have more than one. We have PWM out and we have pulse out that both use timers. So there's some examples already to.
Excellent, thank you.
To use in those. Okay, and then I think Brennan was next. Or no, Jeff. Jeff had something, and then Carter. So we'll do Jeff and then Carter. Unless he meant to say meme.
He posted again.
Okay, I'm just too far up. Okay, Jeff says, I had an experience a couple of weeks ago where Metro M4 Express, the analog out object would misbehave. The board would freeze when I tried to create a DAC for the A1 pin. This misbehavior would survive clicking the reset button, but would go away when I actually removed power from the whole board. What would not be reset by using the physical reset button? Only passives and some resistors were connected to the A0, A1 pins at the time. I think it would be worth checking that when we start up the first analog out, we actually do a software reset on the DAC itself. I don't think necessarily that the peripherals get reset with the CPU. Yeah, I think that a reset line reset only resets the core. It doesn't necessarily reset all the peripherals as well. So the code, it's always, yeah. Even if you can't reproduce it, if you go in and see that it doesn't do the software reset when we start, feel free to add it, even if you can't reproduce it. It's always just a good practice to know. It's always good to know exactly like what state the peripheral is starting in, especially in the cases where we do all of the register banging ourselves. And I missed the time code on that. Cool. And then I'll get back to you on the UART stuff too. I'll take a look at that. And then Carter. And Carter, hold on. If anybody else has topics, please let me know. What I'm trying to avoid is like the dead air where I ask if anybody has anything else. So, if you have something you want to talk about, just put it in the text chat while somebody else talks. Okay, go ahead, Carter.
Yeah, I'm curious what our current process, if we have one, is for kind of tracking drivers that need to be written or people are currently working on. Because remember, a while back we had like a spreadsheet.
Yep.
And we could go in and you could see if there wasn't an entry in the spreadsheet, then obviously it was missing. And then for places there was an entry, it could say like it's done and here's the Git repo, or someone would throw in a name and say, oh, I'm going to work on it.
Right.
What's the current process? What do we currently have for that?
I believe the current process is to create a CircuitPython issue. And we've got that particular label for drivers and libraries.
Okay.
I know there are a few there right now. But that was my intention, is that like before the repo's created, it lives there and then it gets spawned out after the repo's made.
Okay. So then I could go to the CircuitPython repo and just kind of search also. And if basically if there is no issue, then no one's even touched or considered.
I believe so, yeah.
That hardware. Okay.
Yeah.
So then just a sanity check. I thought this was kind of curious. I asked this because I went looking for this TCA multiplexer, the I2C multiplexer.
Okay.
Is it true that no one's even?
I've not heard of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So I would believe it.
Sorry, I've been using it, but it's so simple to use that I haven't used it in my library.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be extremely simple, but for what CircuitPython is trying to do, it'd be nice. I think we had a simple little helper library where people would do the obvious thing of like import TCA.select.
Yeah, that's true. And also, it would be nice to have a pin object that you could pass to, for instance, a display driver or something. So yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me that like as an I2C multiplexer, it could provide I2C object or like device objects that are just like the bus device except worked through the multiplexer. Does that make sense?
Maybe.
So like if you have a sensor that we already support, like you should be able to just pass it in an object from the multiplexer and then the driver just work, even though it's going through the multiplexer.
Right. I need myself to get back and familiarize myself with this thing because it may work in parallel. It's not like it actually goes through. It's like you have two things you talk to. Like once you talk to the TCA and say, go to this channel, then you don't really have to worry about it. Then your other object you just use like you normally would, even if the TCA weren't there.
Right.
It's kind of like an external muxer.
Oh, right. You like tell it, I want to connect to this, and then you do the other thing.
Right, and then you're done. And then you just start doing your other I2C communications like you normally would. And the external muxer like physically routes it to something else.
Yeah.
It would still be nice to have this kind of API for it, because we might find some other devices that work differently. That would still be nice if it gave you, even if it passed the same I2C object that it got in the first place. But it would be nice if it returns an I2C object for you to use.
Right.
Okay. But Radomir, so I'll go ahead and are you cool if I create the issue? And it sounds like you got some great ideas on what this should be. If you can kind of
sure.
comment, if you comment on all this.
I actually misunderstood you initially, because I thought you were talking about a GPIO multiplexer, not an like I2C based GPIO multiplexer.
Oh yeah, there is that too. Huh.
Yeah. So but yeah, that works for it too. So.
Yeah, no, I'm talking about this thing I just linked. There's been a couple forum posts where people have been asking about it, and also they've been asking about it in relation to CircuitPython.
Cool.
And I thought like, oh yeah, no problem. Let me go show you the bundle, and then I was like, wait, it's not in here.
Yeah.
And also, I'm seeing absolutely no discussion about someone having this in work, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Okay, so we just do issues on the CircuitPython repo.
Yeah, it's a start.
And that gets the ball rolling, and then at some point it just spins off into its own repo, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
And I would say the goal is so that you can just use the existing drivers for a device just through it somehow.
Okay, we can capture all this in discussion over on the issue.
Perfect.
Cool. Excellent.
All right. Well, with that, I'm gonna wrap us up. I didn't see anybody bring it up topics on the text chat, so we'll wrap up. This has been the Adafruit CircuitPython Weekly. It happens every Monday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Everybody is welcome to join it and let us know what you're working on. To join, you go to adafru.it/discord. That will get into our Discord chat. We're in the text chat pretty much all week, and then we're in the voice chat for the meeting itself. If you didn't manage to catch it, you probably already figured out, but you can listen to this on YouTube. It's youtube.com/Adafruit, and there's a playlist that you can find for the Adafruit CircuitPython Weekly. This is number 47, I believe. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't think I missed anything else. So as always, thanks everybody for making it, and we'll see you all next week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks. Bye.
Later.